All right, boys, we've made it. We've got all the boring foundational stuff out of the way. With a rough idea of what a mech is going to be used for, how we're going to drive and power it, and more or less what it's going to be made of, we can now answer the more common and fun questions. Namely, how shall they be armed, and how are they to be defended from harm? But, as the answers to both depend entirely on what exactly they'll be expected to fight, it behooves us in our mental quest to quickly recap what I consider to be the mech's primary battlefield role. In short, as far as I, for this series' purposes, see it, a mech is effectively a landlocked battlecruiser plus a warhorse. In essence, a mech's job is to be tanky enough to outgun anything mobile enough to chase down or flank them, like heavy or armored infantry, while also being light and flexible enough to outfox anything they can't just bulldoze, such as a tank, as well as being more dexterous and adaptable overall than most ordinary ground vehicles by virtue of their biomimetic traits, mainly meaning legs, feet, and hands. Now, with all that in mind, if you take an academic approach to combat, meaning you read a lot of books about it, one thing that'll strike you very forcibly is that it has about 104 first rules, and that each and every one of which professes to be the first rule. But as any seasoned warfighter will tell you, there are exactly 3 rules total in a fight, whether it be fisticuffs or total war. 1. Hit him. Don't let him hit you. 2. You can't hit what you can't see, and 3. What you can't see can kill you. So, with that all in mind, when it comes to defense, you have a choice of either being proactive or reactive, active or passive, shields or armor. And like everything else in life, there's pros and cons to each. The advantage to a shield is that it's more concentrated, and so can withstand significantly more punishment. However, it only protects you from one direction at a time, and won't do you any good if it's not actually in your hand or within easy reach when the fighting starts. Meanwhile, armor specifically, and passive defenses more broadly, offer omnipresent multi-directional fields of defensive coverage at the cost of their immediate facility in any one specific area being relatively reduced compared to active countermeasures of the same caliber. In other words, on average, a shield will offer you greater protection from the front than a cuirass of equal quality. However, the shield can only protect you from either the front or side, not both at the same time, while the cuirass guards your front, sides, and back all at once while requiring no conscious input from you, all of which is to say that the purpose of armor is not to make the wearer invulnerable, but to make their survival less dependent on RNGesus, okay? The reason you wear a helmet is not so you can eat 20mm cannon fire with your skull. It's so the one time you zig when you should have zagged doesn't get you prematurely packed off to the great game lobby in the sky. And now that we have our elementary bases covered, let's move on to what you're actually all here to listen to me rant about. Several people asked why I didn't talk about ceramics in the materials video, to which my answer was that I mostly see them as being useful as armor, and if I'm being quite thoroughly honest, in a world where we have the material technology to build truly combat-effective warsuits, I doubt very highly we're going to see ceramics play a significant role. Reason being, the only reason we use them in modern ballistic armor is because they're lighter than steel plates and we don't yet have an economical way to produce titanium of sufficient quality or in sufficient quantity to satisfy the same need. Also, as long as we're on the subject of titanium, I want to quickly address an error from last time. It turns out that even commercially pure titanium is often still alloyed with molybdenum and vanadium, around 6 and 4% respectively, for most applications. Just thought I should clear that up. But anyway, as far as steel versus titanium goes, all of what I said last time still applies. Steel outperforms on the highest end of the physical toughness scale, but titanium has similar performance everywhere else on the ladder for less weight. It also turns out that, no, titanium is not more common than iron. Iron is the most abundant transitional metal in the Earth's crust, and the 4th most abundant element therein overall, whereas titanium dioxide is the 9th. I have no clue where I got the idea it was the opposite from, but I suppose the moral of this story is always be sure to check your sources thoroughly. And speaking of checking things, one other issue that often comes up in these discourses around armor. The idea that if you throw enough bullet mass at anything, eventually you will get through, meaning nothing can ever be said to be entirely bulletproof, only bullet resistant. And on a scientifically objective level, that is technically correct, yes. However, realistically, I think it's fair to say a thing is functionally bulletproof if it is so resistant that the odds of someone having that many bullets are effectively 0. The reason this matters is, whenever armor is speculated upon, apart from the default deference to the almighty TI, and barring the invention of some wonder-bred bullshitium that utterly eclipses all other materials known to man. A handful of terms tend to get thrown about more often than average. Things such as laminated Kevlar, graphene, carbon nanotubes, nanomachines, and a few more. But you get the picture. So rapid fire, here we go. Laminated Kevlar is better at stopping blunt impact forces than regular Kevlar fibers and is slightly more resistant to blades and spikes. Go look up arrows versus sandbags on YouTube if you want a better picture of what exactly I mean by that. But it's still only as resistant as the Kevlar it's made of, so I wouldn't count on it for anti-vehicular protection if I were you. Next, graphene and carbon nanotubes. Much like titanium, their only real holdup at the moment is mass manufacturing. I can't comment on their material or protective qualities since, as far as I'm aware, nobody's actually made a vest or panel out of the stuff and then tested it. So until that happens, I'll reserve judgment. And so long as I am, let's quickly talk about nanomachines. Again, nobody's made a shield or plate out of them, so from a strictly scientific standpoint, whatever cockamamie contrivances a writer pulls out of their nether regions is every bit as valid as any I, or anyone else, could come up with. And now that we've addressed the great honking pink elephant clown named Peanuts in the room, let's round all this off with a few lesser-known and woefully underutilized ideas. First and foremost among which is reactive, or smart, armor, used for protecting vehicles, particularly tanks, from shaped charges and hardened AP rounds. Very briefly, the most common types are explosive, non-explosive, non-energetic, self-limiting explosive, and electric. Just from the names alone can be deduced the critical flaw in this form of protection. Just like ceramics, all but two forms of reactive armor can be defeated by multiple strikes, and all will succumb to successive hits in the same spot. And last, but certainly not least, a pair of things writers never even think about because it's not as sexy as their pseudo-scientific techno-babble plate. Yup, I'm talking about cage armor, also known as bar armor, slat armor, or standoff armor. Again, the strengths and flaws can be deduced via critical thought analysis alone, though formidable at denying the vehicle's vulnerable parts to the brunt of AoE attacks, a regular armor-piercing round or shaped charge of sufficient size and power to threaten a tank will walk straight through it like it were smoke. The same I think is true of battle skirts, which somebody suggested on one of the Mech design videos, though I could see the value in it for deflecting small arms fire away from the Mech's joints, as well as for stealth and evasion, essentially a Gucci camouflage net. I doubt it would carry much water beyond that. But as usual, this has all been my informally educated opinion. Let me know yours in the usual ways and spots. Don't forget to leave a like and subscribe if you enjoyed and want to see more of what this channel has to offer. Check out my books if my proprietary thought recipe is to your taste. Consider leaving me a super thanks or super chat tip, or becoming a channel member to be part of my little arcane wolf pack. And until next time, stay safe, stay sane, and remember, wolves need not concern themselves with the opinions of sheep. Peace.